The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning in March. Maria Chen was sitting at the kitchen table, eating toast with her mother, when she heard the mailman push something through the slot in their front door. She knew what it was before she even stood up. She had been waiting for this letter for 3 months. Maria walked slowly to the door. Her heart was beating fast. The envelope was thick and white, with the blue seal of the United States Air Force Academy printed in the corner. She picked it up with shaking hands. Her mother came to stand behind her. "Open it," her mother said softly. Maria tore the envelope open. She pulled out the letter inside and began to read. The first line said everything she needed to know. "We regret to inform you." She did not cry. Not at first. She just stood there, reading the words over and over again. The letter explained that her application had been reviewed carefully. It said that while her academic scores were excellent and her recommendation letters were strong, the physical evaluation committee had concerns. At the bottom of the typed letter, someone had written a note by hand. The handwriting was sharp and confident. It said, "Candidate lacks the physical resilience required. Recommend she pursue other interests." Maria was 18 years old. She was 5 feet and 2 inches tall. She weighed barely 100 pounds. She had known her whole life that she was small, but she had never let that stop her from dreaming. Her dream had started when she was 7 years old. Her father had taken her to an air show near their home in San Francisco. She had watched the planes fly overhead, spinning and diving through the blue sky. The pilots moved like dancers. They made the impossible look easy. Maria had looked up at her father with wide eyes. "I want to do that," she had said. "I want to fly." Her father had smiled and lifted her onto his shoulders. "Then you will," he had said. "You can do anything, Maria. Remember that." 5 years later, her father was dead. He had worked at a factory, operating heavy machines. One day, there was an accident. Maria was 12 years old when she lost him. After that, everything changed. Maria and her mother moved to a smaller apartment. Money was tight. Her mother worked 2 jobs to pay the bills. Maria helped however she could. She studied hard in school because she knew that education was her way out. She never forgot her father's words. She never stopped dreaming of flying. In high school, Maria did everything right. She got perfect grades. She joined the junior ROTC program. She ran every morning before school, trying to build up her strength. She knew the Air Force Academy was difficult to get into. She knew they wanted strong candidates, but she believed that hard work could overcome anything. Now she stood in the hallway of her small apartment, holding a letter that said she was not good enough. Her mother took the letter from her hands and read it. Her face grew sad. "Maria," she said, "I am so sorry." "It is fine," Maria said. Her voice was flat. "I am fine." But she was not fine. She walked past her mother and went to her bedroom. She closed the door and sat on her bed. The room was small and crowded. There was a desk covered with books and papers. There was a closet full of clothes that did not quite fit anymore. And in the corner, pushed against the wall, there was an old, upright piano. The piano had belonged to her father. It was the one thing they had kept after he died. It was scratched and worn. Some of the keys stuck when you pressed them. But Maria loved it more than anything else she owned. She had started playing piano when she was 4 years old. Her father had taught her the basics. He was not a professional musician, but he loved music. He used to play for her every night before bed. After he died, Maria kept playing. It was how she felt close to him. It was how she survived. Maria sat down at the piano bench. She placed her fingers on the keys. For a moment, she did not move. She just sat there, feeling the cool ivory beneath her fingertips. Then she began to play. She played Chopin's Revolutionary Etude. It was one of the most difficult pieces ever written for piano. The music was fast and angry, and full of pain. Chopin had written it after his home country of Poland was invaded. He had poured all his anger and sadness into the notes. Maria played like she was fighting a war. Her fingers flew across the keys. The music filled the small apartment. It was loud and wild and beautiful. Tears began to fall down her cheeks, but she did not stop playing. She could not stop. In the kitchen, Maria's mother stood listening. She had heard her daughter play this piece many times before. But tonight it sounded different. Tonight it sounded like someone's heart was breaking. The neighbors in the building heard the music too. They lived in thin-walled apartments where sound traveled easily, but no one complained. No one ever complained when Maria played. Old Mrs. Patterson from upstairs said it sounded like angels. The young couple next door said it made them feel things they could not explain. Even the grumpy man from the first floor, who complained about everything, grew quiet when Maria played. Tonight, people in the building stopped what they were doing. They listened to the music pouring through the walls. It sounded like someone was fighting a battle. It sounded like someone was refusing to give up. Maria played for over an hour. She played until her fingers ached and her eyes were dry from crying. When she finally stopped, the apartment was silent. The night had grown dark outside her window. Her mother opened the bedroom door quietly. She came and sat beside Maria on the piano bench. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "Your father would be proud of you," her mother finally said. "I failed," Maria whispered. "I was not good enough." Her mother shook her head. "You did not fail. They made a mistake. They do not see what I see." "What do you see?" Her mother took Maria's hands in her own. She looked at her daughter's fingers, still red from playing. "I see someone who never gives up. I see someone with more strength than she knows. One letter does not decide your future, Maria. You decide your future." Maria looked at the piano keys. She thought about her father lifting her onto his shoulders at the air show. She thought about his voice telling her she could do anything. The letter had said she lacked resilience. The letter had said she should pursue other interests. But Maria knew something the people who wrote that letter did not know. She knew that she had been knocked down before. She knew that she had lost her father, lost her home, lost so many things, and every single time, she had gotten back up. Tomorrow, she would figure out another way. Tomorrow, she would start fighting again. But tonight, she would play piano. Tonight, she would let the music carry her through the darkness. She placed her fingers on the keys once more, and she began to play. 6 months passed after the rejection letter. Maria did not spend those months feeling sorry for herself. She spent them making a new plan. If the Air Force Academy did not want her, she would find another way into the military. She learned that she could enlist as a regular airman. It was not the same as going to the academy. She would not start as an officer. She would start at the very bottom. But she would be in the Air Force. She would have a chance. Maria walked into the recruitment office on a hot September morning. The recruiter was a large man with a shaved head and tired eyes. He had seen hundreds of young people walk through his door. Most of them had no idea what they were signing up for. "I want to enlist," Maria told him. The recruiter looked at her small frame. He did not hide his doubt. "You sure about that?" he asked. "Basic training is not easy. A lot of people quit." "I will not quit," Maria said. The recruiter shrugged. He had heard that before, too. He handed her the papers to sign. 3 weeks later, Maria arrived at Lackland Air Force Base in Texas for basic training. The heat hit her like a wall when she stepped off the bus. It was October, but Texas did not care about seasons. The temperature was over 90 degrees. Maria's uniform was already sticking to her skin. A drill instructor was waiting for them. His name was Sergeant Wells. He was a tall black man with muscles that looked like they were carved from stone. His voice was so loud it seemed to shake the air. "Listen up," he shouted at the new recruits. "You are nothing right now. You are less than nothing. Over the next 8 weeks, I am going to turn you into airmen. Some of you will make it. Most of you will not. If you want to go home crying to your mama, the door is right there." He pointed at Maria. "You, Tiny, what is your name?" "Chen, sir." "Maria Chen." Sergeant Wells walked up to her. He stood so close she could see the sweat on his forehead. He looked down at her like she was a bug he was thinking about stepping on. "Chen," he said slowly, "do you know what we do to people who cannot keep up?" "No, sir. We send them home." "Do you want to go home, Chen?" "No, sir." Sergeant Wells smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "We will see about that." The first week of basic training nearly destroyed Maria. Every day started at 4 in the morning with screaming and chaos. They ran for miles in the Texas heat. They did push-ups until their arms gave out. They did sit-ups until their stomachs burned. They crawled through mud and climbed over walls and carried heavy packs on their backs. Maria was the smallest person in her unit. She was also the slowest. When they ran, she fell behind. When they did push-ups, she collapsed before everyone else. The other recruits began to look at her with pity. Some of them looked at her with annoyance. They were being judged as a team. Her weakness was their weakness. At the end of the first week, they took the initial physical fitness test. Maria had to run 1.5 miles in under 14 minutes. She had to do at least 27 push-ups in 1 minute. She had to do 50 sit-ups in 1 minute. She failed. She failed all 3 parts. Sergeant Wells called her into his office that night. He sat behind his desk, looking at her test scores. "Chen," he said, "you failed everything." "Yes, sir. You have 2 more chances to pass before we send you home. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." Sergeant Wells leaned back in his chair. He studied her face for a long moment. "I looked at your file," he said. "It says here you were a piano player. Some kind of child prodigy. Won competitions and everything." Maria felt her cheeks grow hot. "That was a long time ago, sir." "Piano," Sergeant Wells repeated. He shook his head slowly. "Let me tell you something, piano girl. This is not a concert hall. You cannot play your way out of push-ups. You cannot play your way through a 5-mile run. Whatever made you think you belonged here, you were wrong." Maria stood very still. She did not let her face show any emotion. "Permission to speak, sir." "Go ahead." "I am going to pass, sir. I am going to become an airman. And with respect, sir, you are wrong about me." Sergeant Wells stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was a short, hard laugh. "Get out of my office, piano girl. I will see you at 4 tomorrow morning." That night, Maria could not sleep. She lay in her bunk, staring at the ceiling. All around her, other recruits were snoring. They were tired from the day's training. But Maria's mind would not stop racing. She thought about what Sergeant Wells had said. "Piano girl." He meant it as an insult. But the more Maria thought about it, the more she realized something important. Piano had taught her things that other people did not understand. It had taught her that the impossible became possible if you broke it into smaller pieces. A difficult song was not one big challenge. It was thousands of small challenges. You did not play a whole song at once. You played one note at a time, one measure at a time, one phrase at a time. Maybe running was the same. Maybe push-ups were the same. Maria got out of bed quietly. She went to the bathroom at the end of the barracks. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The tile floor was cold under her bare feet. She got down on the floor and started doing push-ups. One at a time. She did not think about doing 27. She just thought about doing one more. Then one more. Then one more. When her arms gave out, she rested for 60 seconds. Then she started again. She did this every night for the next 2 weeks. While everyone else slept, Maria was in the bathroom, doing push-ups and sit-ups. During the day, when they ran, she started counting in musical time. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. She imagined piano keys beneath her feet. Each step was a note. Each breath was a rest between phrases. Something began to change. Her body began to adapt. She was still the smallest person in her unit, but she was getting stronger. She was getting faster. The pain did not go away, but she learned to push through it. Sergeant Wells noticed the change. He did not say anything at first, but Maria saw him watching her during training. She saw the slight surprise in his eyes when she finished a run without falling behind. The second fitness test came. Maria passed the push-ups. She passed the sit-ups, but she missed the run time by 30 seconds. She had failed again. "One more chance, piano girl," Sergeant Wells said. "One more chance, and then you go home." Maria did not respond. She just went back to training. She ran extra miles after dinner. She did push-ups until her arms shook. She barely slept. She barely ate. Her body was exhausted, but her mind refused to give up. The final fitness test was on a Friday morning. The sky was gray and heavy with clouds. Maria stood at the starting line with the other recruits who had failed before. There were 5 of them. If they did not pass today, they would be sent home. Sergeant Wells stood at the finish line with a stopwatch. "You have 14 minutes, he called out. "Not 14 minutes and 1 second. Not 14 minutes and 10 seconds. 14 minutes. Go." Maria started running. Her legs felt heavy at first. Her lungs burned in the humid air, but she counted in her head. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. She imagined the piano keys. She imagined Chopin's revolutionary etude. Fast and angry and refusing to stop, she crossed the finish line in 13 minutes and 42 seconds. Sergeant Wells looked at his stopwatch. He looked at Maria. For one long moment, he did not speak. Then he nodded once. "Not bad, piano girl," he said quietly. "Not bad at all." Maria had passed. She was going to become an airman. She had found her way in through the back door, but this was only the beginning. Maria graduated from basic training in December. Her mother flew to Texas to watch the ceremony. When Maria marched across the parade ground in her dress uniform, her mother cried. It was the first time Maria had seen her mother cry since her father's funeral. "Your father is watching," her mother whispered when they hugged. "He is so proud." After graduation, Maria received her first assignment. She was sent to Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, just outside Las Vegas. The desert stretched for miles in every direction. The sun was bright and harsh. Fighter jets flew overhead every day, their engines screaming across the empty sky. Maria watched those jets with longing. She had joined the Air Force to fly, but she was not a pilot. She was not even close to being a pilot. She was assigned to logistics. Her job was simple. She sat at a desk in a large warehouse. She processed paperwork. She tracked supplies. She made sure that the right equipment went to the right places. It was important work. The pilots could not fly without fuel and parts and food. But it was not what Maria had dreamed of. Every day was the same. She woke up early. She put on her uniform. She walked to the warehouse. She sat at her computer and typed numbers into spreadsheets. She ate lunch alone in the cafeteria. She went back to her desk. She typed more numbers. She went home to her small room in the barracks. She went to sleep. And the next day, she did it all again. The other airmen in her unit were friendly enough. They invited her to go bowling on weekends. They asked her to join them for drinks at the bar near the base. But Maria always said no. She was saving money. She was studying for exams. She was trying to find a way to become an officer, to get into pilot training, to make her dream come true. The months passed slowly. Maria's life became a gray routine. She forgot what it felt like to be excited about anything. She forgot what it felt like to want something badly. She also forgot about the piano. There was a piano in the recreation center on base. It was a dusty old thing that nobody played. Maria walked past it every day on her way to the cafeteria. At first, she would stop and look at it. She would remember her father teaching her scales in their apartment. She would remember playing Chopin on the night she received her rejection letter. But as the months went on, she stopped looking at the piano. She stopped thinking about music. That part of her life felt far away, like it had belonged to someone else. 2 years passed like this. Maria was 20 years old. She had been promoted once, to Airman First Class. It was a small step up. Her pay increased a little. Her responsibilities stayed the same. She still sat at a desk. She still typed numbers. She still watched jets fly overhead and wondered what it felt like to touch the clouds. One afternoon, Maria was eating lunch alone in the cafeteria when a woman sat down across from her. The woman was in her 50s, with silver hair and a kind face. She was wearing civilian clothes, which meant she was not military. Maria recognized her. She was Mrs. Bradley, the base commander's wife. She organized charity events and welcomed new families to the base. "You are Airman Chen, yes?" Mrs. Bradley asked. Maria straightened in her seat. She was not used to important people talking to her. "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. Bradley smiled warmly. "I have heard good things about you. They say you work very hard." "I try my best, ma'am." Mrs. Bradley nodded. She looked tired. There were dark circles under her eyes. "I need help," she said. "I am organizing a charity gala next month. It is a big event. We are raising money for children of fallen service members. Their parents died serving our country. We want to help them with school and books and things like that." Maria felt a twist in her chest. She thought of her own father. He had not died in military service, but he had died working hard to support his family. She understood what it meant to lose a parent. "That sounds like a wonderful cause, ma'am. The problem is the entertainment," Mrs. Bradley continued. "We had a band scheduled to play, a jazz group from Las Vegas. But they canceled yesterday. Something about a better offer in Los Angeles." She sighed heavily. "Now I have 300 guests coming to a gala with no music. I have been calling every musician in Nevada, but no one is available on such short notice." Maria nodded sympathetically. She did not know why Mrs. Bradley was telling her this. "I was wondering," Mrs. Bradley said slowly, "if you might know anyone who plays music. A friend, perhaps? A relative?" Maria shook her head. "I am sorry, ma'am. I do not know any musicians here." A young sergeant at the next table overheard their conversation. His name was Thompson. Maria knew him from the logistics office. He was always making jokes and trying to make people laugh. "Chen plays piano," Thompson said loudly. "I heard her humming classical music once. She said she used to play." Maria felt her face turn red. "That was a long time ago. I do not play anymore." Mrs. Bradley's eyes lit up. "You play piano? Why did you not say so?" "I was not very good, ma'am. Just a hobby." Thompson laughed. "She is being modest. I looked her up online once. She won competitions when she was a kid. There are videos of her playing on the internet. She was like a little genius." Maria wanted to disappear. She had worked hard to leave that part of her life behind. The piano reminded her of her father. It reminded her of the dreams she had failed to achieve. It was easier not to think about it. Mrs. Bradley reached across the table and took Maria's hand. "Please," she said. "I know I am asking a lot, but this gala is important. These children need our help. I have nowhere else to turn." Maria looked into the older woman's eyes. She saw desperation there. She also saw kindness. Mrs. Bradley was not ordering her to do anything. She was asking. She was hoping. Maria thought about the children the gala would help. She thought about growing up without a father, about the empty space at the dinner table, about the questions that would never be answered. She thought about how music had helped her survive those dark years. "I have not played in 2 years," Maria said quietly. "I do not know if I can still do it." "Will you try?" Mrs. Bradley asked. "For the children?" Maria was silent for a long moment. Her heart was pounding. Part of her wanted to run away. Part of her wanted to forget this conversation ever happened. But another part of her, a small part that she had buried deep inside, wanted to say yes. That part of her missed the piano. It missed the feeling of keys beneath her fingers. It missed the way music could take all the pain and turn it into something beautiful. "Okay," Maria heard herself say. "I will try." Mrs. Bradley's face broke into a huge smile. She squeezed Maria's hand tightly. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you so much. You have no idea what this means." Maria nodded. She did not feel like a hero. She felt terrified. That night, Maria went to the recreation center. She walked past the pool tables and the video games and the comfortable chairs where airmen relaxed after long shifts. She walked to the corner where the old piano sat, covered in dust. She sat down on the bench. The wood creaked under her weight. She placed her fingers on the keys. They were cold and slightly sticky from years of neglect. Maria closed her eyes. She tried to remember how to play, but her mind was blank. Her fingers felt clumsy and unfamiliar. The music that had once flowed through her like water seemed to have dried up completely. She pressed a single key. The note rang out, slightly out of tune. It sounded lonely and lost. Maria did not know if she could do this. She did not know if she could find the music again. But she had made a promise. And Maria Chen never broke her promises. She took a deep breath. She placed her hands on the keys, and she began to practice. The gala was in 4 weeks. She had a lot of work to do. The night of the gala arrived faster than Maria expected. 4 weeks had passed in a blur of practice sessions, late nights, and growing fear. She had spent every free moment at the old piano in the recreation center. Her fingers had slowly remembered what her mind had tried to forget. The music had come back, piece by piece, note by note, but knowing how to play and performing in front of 300 people were two very different things. Maria stood backstage in a small room behind the base's main ballroom. She was wearing her dress uniform, the blue jacket and skirt that she saved for special occasions. Her hands were shaking. Her mouth was dry. Through the thin walls, she could hear the crowd talking and laughing and clinking glasses. Mrs. Bradley had told her that important people would be there tonight. Generals and colonels and politicians, wealthy donors who wrote big checks for charity, the base commander himself, Colonel Henderson, and his entire staff. This was not a small gathering. This was an event that people would remember, and Maria was about to play piano for all of them. She had chosen to play Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2. It was one of the most beautiful and difficult pieces in the classical music world. The Russian composer had written it after years of depression and self-doubt. It was music about falling into darkness and finding a way out. It was music about hope. Maria had chosen this piece because her father had loved it. When she was a little girl, he used to play a recording of it while he cooked dinner. He would close his eyes and wave his hands like he was conducting an invisible orchestra. Maria would watch him and laugh. This music saved a man's life, her father had told her once. Rachmaninoff was so sad he could not write anything for years. Then he went to a doctor who helped him believe in himself again. And he wrote this. The most beautiful thing he ever created. Maria had not thought about that story in years. But now, standing backstage with her hands shaking, she understood it in a new way. She understood what it meant to lose your confidence. She understood what it meant to find it again. A knock came at the door. Mrs. Bradley poked her head in. "It is time," she said softly. "Are you ready?" Maria was not ready. She would never be ready. But she nodded anyway. "Yes, ma'am." She followed Mrs. Bradley through a narrow hallway and out onto the stage. The ballroom was huge and glittering. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. Round tables filled the room, covered with white tablecloths and fresh flowers. Men in uniforms and women in elegant dresses sat at every table. They all turned to look at the small young woman walking toward the grand piano at the center of the stage. Maria felt their eyes on her. She felt their curiosity and their doubt. She was nobody special. She was just an airman who processed paperwork. What was she doing up here? She sat down at the piano bench. The grand piano was beautiful. Nothing like the dusty old instrument she had practiced on. The keys were smooth and white. The black wood gleamed under the lights. Maria placed her fingers on the keys and felt a strange sense of peace wash over her. This was where she belonged. This was who she really was. The room fell silent. 300 people held their breath, waiting. Maria began to play. The first notes were soft and slow, like a question being asked. The melody rose from the piano like smoke, curling through the air, filling every corner of the room. Maria closed her eyes and let the music take over. She forgot about the crowd. She forgot about her fear. She forgot about everything except the notes flowing from her fingers. The piece built slowly. The soft beginning gave way to something stronger. The music grew louder, more passionate. Maria's hands flew across the keys, finding notes she had not played in years. Her body swayed with the rhythm. Her breath matched the phrasing of the melody. At her table near the front of the room, Mrs. Bradley put her hand over her mouth. Tears began to roll down her cheeks. She had expected competence. She had hoped for something nice to fill the silence. She had not expected this. This was art. This was magic. This was something that would stay with her for the rest of her life. At another table, a colonel in his dress blues sat frozen with his wine glass halfway to his lips. His name was James Patterson. He had flown in from Washington for this event. He was 53 years old, a decorated officer with a long and successful career. He had seen and done many things, but he had never heard anything quite like this. The music reached its climax. The notes crashed like waves against rocks. Maria's fingers moved so fast they blurred. The piano sang with joy and sorrow and everything in between. The room seemed to vibrate with the power of the sound. Then, slowly, the music began to fade. The storm passed. The notes grew soft again. The melody returned to its gentle beginning, like a traveler coming home after a long journey. Maria played the final notes with her eyes still closed, her face peaceful and calm. The last note hung in the air for a long moment. Then it faded into silence. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved, nobody breathed. Then the room exploded with applause. People jumped to their feet. They clapped their hands and shouted their praise. Mrs. Bradley was openly crying. Colonel Henderson looked like he had just witnessed a miracle. Everywhere Maria looked, she saw faces filled with emotion. She stood up from the piano bench and bowed. Her legs were shaking. Her heart was pounding. She could not believe what had just happened. After the performance, Maria tried to slip away quietly. She was not used to attention. She wanted to go back to her room and be alone with her thoughts. But people kept stopping her. They wanted to shake her hand. They wanted to tell her how beautiful the music had been. They wanted to know where she had learned to play like that. Maria answered their questions as politely as she could, but she was overwhelmed. She was not used to being seen. She was not used to being valued for something other than her work. She was heading toward the exit when a man stepped into her path. He was tall and gray-haired, with sharp eyes and a confident posture. He was wearing the uniform of a full colonel. Maria recognized the insignia immediately. "Airman Chen," the man said. "That was extraordinary. Thank you, sir." Maria did not know this man. She did not understand why he was talking to her. "I am Colonel James Patterson," he said. "I work at the Pentagon. I came here tonight because I support the charity. I did not expect to hear music like that. I am glad you enjoyed it, sir." Colonel Patterson studied her face for a long moment. There was something strange in his expression. Something like recognition. "Where did you learn to play?" he asked. "My father taught me when I was young, sir. Then I had formal lessons for many years. Did you ever consider pursuing music professionally?" Maria shook her head. "I wanted to fly, sir. I wanted to join the Air Force. And here you are." "Yes, sir. Here I am." Colonel Patterson tilted his head. He was looking at her like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "What is your first name, Airman Chen?" "Maria, sir." Something flickered in the colonel's eyes. His face changed slightly. "Maria Chen," he repeated slowly. "Why does that name sound familiar to me?" Maria felt a cold knot form in her stomach. She had a sudden terrible feeling that she knew exactly why her name was familiar to this man. "I do not know, sir." Colonel Patterson was quiet for a moment. Then his eyes widened slightly. "The academy," he said softly. 5 years ago, you applied to the Air Force Academy." Maria could not speak. She just nodded. "I was on the selection committee that year," Colonel Patterson said. "I reviewed applications. I made recommendations." He paused. "I wrote a note on your file. I said you lacked physical resilience. I said you should pursue other interests." The words hung in the air between them. Maria felt like the ground was tilting beneath her feet. "That was you," she finally said. "Yes." Colonel Patterson's voice was quiet. "That was me." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The noise of the party continued around them. People laughed and talked and celebrated. But Maria and Colonel Patterson stood in their own private bubble of silence. "I was wrong," the colonel finally said. "I made a judgment based on numbers on a page. I did not see the person behind those numbers. I did not see this." He gestured toward the piano. "Someone who plays like that does not lack resilience. Someone who plays like that has more strength than most people will ever understand." Maria did not know what to say. For 5 years, she had carried the weight of his rejection. She had used it as fuel to keep going. She had imagined meeting him someday and proving him wrong. But now that the moment was here, she felt no triumph. She felt nothing but a strange, hollow sadness. "I am still in the Air Force," she said. "I found another way. I can see that." Colonel Patterson reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. He handed it to Maria. "I work with personnel assignments now. I help match people with opportunities. If you ever want to pursue officer training, if you ever want to try for pilot school, call my office. I owe you at least that much." Maria took the card. She looked at it for a long moment. Then she looked up at the man who had once decided she was not good enough. "Thank you, sir," she said. Colonel Patterson nodded. He looked like he wanted to say something more, but the words did not come. Finally, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Maria stood alone, holding the business card in her hand. Through the windows of the ballroom, she could see the dark Nevada sky, filled with stars. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to dream again. Maria kept Colonel Patterson's business card in her wallet. She looked at it every day, but she did not call. She was afraid. She had been rejected once before, and the memory of that pain was still fresh. What if Patterson had only been polite at the gala? What if he had forgotten about her by now? What if she called and he said no again? Days turned into weeks. Maria went back to her desk in the logistics warehouse. She typed numbers into spreadsheets. She tracked supplies. She watched jets fly overhead and wondered what it felt like to be in the sky. Nothing had changed. Everything had changed. People on the base talked about her piano performance. Word had spread quickly. The quiet airman who processed paperwork had played music that made grown men cry. Strangers stopped Maria in the cafeteria to tell her how much they had enjoyed it. Her supervisor asked if she would play at his daughter's wedding. Mrs. Bradley called her every week, just to check in and say hello. Maria appreciated the attention, but it also made her uncomfortable. She was used to being invisible. She was used to doing her work and going home and keeping to herself. Now people knew her name. People expected things from her. It was strange and a little bit frightening. 1 month after the gala, Maria received a phone call. She was sitting at her desk, entering inventory numbers into a database, when her supervisor told her someone was on the line for her. "Who is it?" Maria asked. Her supervisor shrugged. "Some colonel from Washington," said his name was Patterson. Maria's heart stopped. She picked up the phone with trembling hands. "This is Airman Chen." "Airman Chen." Colonel Patterson's voice was warm and friendly. "I was beginning to think you had lost my card." "No, sir. I still have it." "But you did not call." Maria was silent for a moment. "I was not sure if you meant it, sir. What you said at the gala." "I meant every word." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "I have been thinking about you, Airman Chen. I have been thinking about the mistake I made 5 years ago. I want to help you fix it." Maria gripped the phone tighter. "What do you mean, sir?" "I mean, I want to help you become an officer. I want to help you get into pilot training. If that is still what you want." Maria could not speak. She could barely breathe. Was this really happening? Was the man who had rejected her really offering to help her achieve her dream? "Yes, sir," she finally managed to say. "Good." Colonel Patterson sounded pleased. "I have been looking into your records. Your performance reviews are excellent. Your test scores are strong. You have everything you need to apply for officer candidate school. The only thing missing is a strong recommendation from a senior officer. And you would provide that, sir?" "I would do more than that. I have contacts at OCS. I have friends who owe me favors. If you are willing to work hard, I can open doors for you. I can give you the chance you deserved 5 years ago." Maria felt tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them away quickly. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you do this for me?" There was a long pause before Colonel Patterson answered. "Because I have spent 30 years in this Air Force," he said slowly. "I have made thousands of decisions about thousands of people. Most of those decisions were correct, but some of them were wrong. Some of them haunted me." He paused again. "When I heard you play at that gala, I realized something. I realized that talent and strength do not always look the way we expect them to look. I judged you by your size, by your weight, by numbers on a page. I did not see who you really were. That was my failure, not yours." Maria did not know what to say. She had spent years being angry at this man. She had used his rejection as motivation to keep pushing forward. Now he was apologizing. Now he was offering to help. It was almost too much to process. "I do not want special treatment," Maria said carefully. "I want to earn my place. I want to prove that I belong." "I understand," Colonel Patterson replied. "And I would not offer you anything less. Officer candidate school is brutal. Pilot training is even harder. I can open the door for you, but you will have to walk through it on your own. No one can do that part for you." Maria thought about this for a long moment. She thought about all the obstacles she had already overcome. Basic training? The fitness tests. The long months of thankless work. She had earned her place once. She could earn it again. Okay, she said. I am ready. Good. I will send you the application materials this week. Fill them out and send them back to me. I will take care of the rest. Thank you, sir. I do not know how to repay you. Colonel Patterson laughed softly. You can repay me by succeeding. Show the world what I should have seen 5 years ago. Show them what you are made of. The phone call ended. Maria sat at her desk for a long time, staring at the receiver. Her supervisor came over and asked if everything was okay. Maria nodded, but she could not find the words to explain what had just happened. That night, Maria called her mother. She told her about the gala, about Colonel Patterson, about the opportunity that had suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Her mother listened quietly. When Maria finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Your father always said you would fly, her mother finally said. Her voice was thick with emotion. He said nothing could keep you on the ground. He was right. Maria smiled. For the first time in years, she felt like herself again. Not the small girl who had been rejected, not the invisible airman who processed paperwork, but Maria Chen, the girl who played piano like she was fighting a war, the girl who refused to give up, the girl who was going to touch the sky. The application materials arrived 3 days later. Maria filled them out carefully, double-checking every answer, making sure everything was perfect. She wrote an essay about why she wanted to become an officer. She wrote about her father, about the air show when she was 7, about the dream that had never died. She wrote about failure and rejection and finding another way. She wrote about piano and music and the power of refusing to surrender. When she finished, she sealed the envelope and mailed it to Washington. Then she waited. 3 weeks later, she received the news. She had been accepted into officer candidate school. She would report to Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama in 6 months. Maria read the letter over and over again. She could not believe it was real. After everything she had been through, after all the doors that had closed in her face, one had finally opened. She was going to become an officer. She was going to get her chance to fly. But first, she had to survive OCS. And that, she knew, would be the hardest thing she had ever done. Maria was 23 years old when she arrived at Maxwell Air Force Base for officer candidate school. Most of the other candidates were younger than her. They were fresh out of college, eager and bright and full of energy. They had never served as enlisted airmen. They did not know what it was like to work their way up from the bottom. Some of them looked at Maria with curiosity. Others looked at her with suspicion. They knew she had gotten in through unconventional means. They knew she had a powerful sponsor in Washington. They called her the charity case behind her back. They thought she had not earned her place. Maria heard the whispers. She saw the looks. But she did not let them bother her. She had faced doubt before. She had proven people wrong before. She would do it again. The first day of OCS was a shock to everyone. The training officers screamed in their faces. They made them run until they collapsed. They made them do push-ups in the mud. They tore apart their carefully made beds and threw their belongings across the room. It was designed to break them down, to see who would quit and who would survive. Maria survived. She was older than the other candidates. She was more experienced. She knew how to keep her head down and do the work. She knew how to push through pain. She knew how to count in musical time when her body wanted to give up. But surviving was not enough. Maria wanted more than that. She wanted to excel. She wanted to prove that she belonged, not just to the other candidates, but to herself. The weeks passed slowly. Maria threw herself into the training. She studied late into the night. She volunteered for extra duty. She helped other candidates who were struggling. Slowly, the whispers began to fade. People started to see her differently. They started to see her for who she really was. She was not a charity case. She was not there because of connections. She was there because she refused to give up. She was there because some dreams are worth fighting for. And Maria Chen had only just begun to fight. Officer candidate school was nothing like basic training. Basic training had been about physical strength and following orders. OCS was about leadership. It was about making decisions under pressure. It was about becoming the kind of person that others would follow into danger. Maria discovered this on her third day at Maxwell Air Force Base. The training officers divided the candidates into small groups and gave each group a problem to solve. Maria's group had to figure out how to move a heavy barrel across a field, using only ropes and wooden planks. They had 15 minutes. If they failed, everyone would do push-ups until their arms gave out. The other candidates in Maria's group immediately started arguing. A tall man named Rodriguez thought they should roll the barrel. A woman named Foster wanted to build a sled. A young man named Jackson said they should just pick it up and carry it. Everyone talked at once. Nobody listened. Maria watched the chaos for 2 minutes. Then she stepped forward. "Stop," she said. Her voice was calm but firm. "We are wasting time. We need a plan." The others turned to look at her. Rodriguez frowned. "Who put you in charge?" he asked. "Nobody," Maria replied. "But if we keep arguing, we are all going to fail. Let me suggest something. We combine your ideas. We use the planks to create a ramp. We use the ropes to control the barrel as it rolls. We work together instead of against each other." There was a moment of silence. Then Jackson nodded slowly. "That could work," he said. They tried Maria's plan. It was not perfect. The barrel almost rolled off the planks twice. But they finished with 30 seconds to spare. The training officer nodded with approval. "Good teamwork," he said. "Chen, you showed leadership. Remember that feeling?" Maria did remember. She remembered what it felt like to step forward when everyone else was lost. She remembered what it felt like to bring people together. It was like conducting an orchestra. Each person was an instrument. Her job was to help them play in harmony. As the weeks went on, Maria found herself taking on more leadership roles. She was not the loudest candidate. She was not the most physically impressive. But she had something that many of the others lacked. She had patience. She had empathy. She knew how to listen before she spoke. The other candidates began to respect her. Even Rodriguez, who had challenged her on that first day, started asking for her advice. People stopped calling her the charity case. They started calling her by her name. But not everyone accepted Maria. There were some candidates who could not see past her small size and quiet manner. They thought leadership meant being loud and aggressive. They thought strength meant muscles and height. They did not understand that the strongest people were often the ones who had been broken and put themselves back together. One of these candidates was a man named Peters. He was 22 years old, tall and athletic, with a handsome face and a confident smile. He came from a military family. His father was a general. His grandfather had been a general. He believed that he was destined to lead. Peters did not like Maria. He did not say this directly, but Maria could feel it in the way he looked at her. He thought she did not belong. He thought she was taking a spot that should have gone to someone more deserving. One night, about 6 weeks into OCS, Maria was studying in the common room when Peters sat down across from her. He had a friendly smile on his face, but his eyes were cold. "Chen," he said. "Can I ask you something?" Maria looked up from her book. "Of course. How did you get in here?" "Really?" Maria kept her face calm. "I applied. I was accepted. Come on." Peters leaned forward. "We both know that is not the whole story. You have a sponsor in Washington, some colonel who pulled strings for you. Everyone knows it." Maria felt anger rise in her chest, but she pushed it down. She had learned long ago that anger was a waste of energy. "Colonel Patterson recommended me," she said evenly. "He believed I deserved a chance. But I still had to meet all the requirements. I still had to pass the same tests as everyone else." "So," Peters shook his head. "That is not how the world works. People like you do not get in without help. People like you are not meant to be officers." "People like me?" Maria repeated quietly. "What does that mean?" Peters shrugged. "You know what I mean. Small, weak." Maria was silent for a long moment. She thought about all the people who had underestimated her. Sergeant Wells calling her piano girl. The commander, who said she lacked resilience. Her own doubts that whispered in the darkness late at night. Then she thought about everything she had overcome. The rejection, the years of hard work, the nights spent doing push-ups alone in the bathroom, the music that had saved her when nothing else could. "You are right about one thing," Maria finally said. "I do not look like what people expect. I do not fit the image in their heads. But let me tell you something, Peters. I have failed more times than you have ever tried. I have been knocked down more times than you can imagine. And every single time, I got back up. That is what makes a leader. Not size, not family connections, not how loud you can shout. It is the ability to keep going when everything tells you to quit." Peters stared at her. For a moment, he seemed unsure how to respond. "We will see," he finally said. He stood up and walked away. Maria watched him go. Her hands were shaking slightly, but not from fear, from something else. From a fire that had been burning inside her since she was 7 years old, watching planes dance across the sky. The next few weeks were the hardest of Maria's life. The training became more intense. The physical demands increased. The mental pressure grew. Candidates began to drop out. Some quit. Some were removed for poor performance. The group that had started with 60 people shrank to 45. Maria pushed through. She ran when her legs screamed for rest. She studied when her eyes blurred from exhaustion. She led her team through challenge after challenge, earning their trust and respect. But the hardest part was not the training. It was the loneliness. Maria had always been someone who kept to herself. She had friends, but she did not let people get too close. She was afraid of being hurt. She was afraid of losing people the way she had lost her father. One Sunday evening, Maria found an empty classroom with a piano in the corner. It was an old instrument, probably used for ceremonies and events. She sat down and began to play softly, not wanting to disturb anyone. She played for about 10 minutes before she realized someone was watching her. She turned around and saw Jackson standing in the doorway. He was one of the candidates she had worked with on the barrel exercise. They had become friendly over the past weeks, but Maria would not have called him a close friend. "Sorry," Jackson said. "I did not mean to interrupt. I heard the music and I wanted to see where it was coming from." "It is okay." Maria moved over on the piano bench. "Do you play?" Jackson laughed and sat down beside her. "Not even a little. I can barely clap in rhythm. But I love listening to music, especially whatever you were just playing." "It is called Clair de Lune," Maria said, "by Debussy. It means moonlight, in French. It is beautiful." Jackson was quiet for a moment. "Can I ask you something? And you do not have to answer if you do not want to. Go ahead. How do you do it? How do you stay so calm all the time? This place is breaking me. I cannot sleep. I cannot think straight. I feel like I am falling apart." Maria looked at the piano keys. She thought about the question for a long time before answering. "I imagine the piano," she finally said. "When things get hard, I imagine that everything is music. Each problem is a difficult passage. Each challenge is a note that I have to play. I break everything into small pieces, just like I learned to do when I was a child practicing scales." Jackson shook his head slowly. "I wish I had something like that. Something to hold on to." Maria placed her hands on the keys. "Would you like me to teach you?" "Teach me what?" "I told you. I cannot play." "Not piano," Maria said. "I can teach you how to listen, how to let the music carry you through the hard parts. It is not about playing the notes yourself. It is about letting the music become part of you." Jackson looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay," he said. "Teach me." Maria smiled. She began to play again, and this time she did not play alone. She had a student. She had a friend. Maybe she did not have to be so lonely after all. Week 9 of Officer Candidate School was designed to break people. The training officers called it Hell Week. They were not exaggerating. The week began at midnight on Sunday. A siren woke the candidates from their sleep. Training officers burst into the barracks, shouting and throwing things. The candidates had 5 minutes to get dressed and report to the parade ground. Anyone who was late would be punished. Anyone who complained would be punished. Anyone who showed weakness would be punished. For the next 7 days, the candidates were pushed to their absolute limits. They slept only 3 hours per night. They ran 20 miles through the Alabama countryside. They carried heavy packs up steep hills. They crawled through mud and climbed over walls and swam across cold lakes. They solved complex problems while their bodies screamed for rest. Maria had been through difficult training before. Basic training had taught her how to push through pain. But this was different. This was not just about physical strength. This was about mental endurance. It was about finding something deep inside yourself when everything else was gone. By Wednesday, Maria was running on fumes. Her legs felt like they were filled with sand. Her arms were covered in bruises. Her mind was foggy and slow. She kept making small mistakes, forgetting details, losing focus. The training officers noticed. They started paying more attention to her. On Thursday afternoon, the candidates were sent on a long field exercise. They had to navigate through thick forest, using only a map and compass. They had to set up camp, cook their own food, and stand watch through the night. It was supposed to test their ability to survive and lead under pressure. Maria's group included Jackson, Rodriguez, Foster, and 2 other candidates. Maria was assigned as the team leader. It was her responsibility to get everyone through the exercise safely. The first few hours went well. Maria led the group through the forest, checking the map carefully, making sure they stayed on course. The sun was hot, and the terrain was rough. But everyone kept moving. They reached their campsite by late afternoon and began setting up tents. That was when things started to go wrong. Maria was helping Foster tie down a tent when she suddenly felt dizzy. The world spun around her. Her vision blurred. She tried to take a step forward, but her legs would not obey. She heard someone call her name, and then everything went black. When Maria opened her eyes, she was lying on the ground. Jackson was kneeling beside her, looking worried. The other candidates were gathered around, their faces filled with concern. "Chen," Jackson said. "Are you okay? You just collapsed." Maria tried to sit up, but her head was pounding. Her mouth was dry. She felt weak and confused. "I am fine," she said. "Just need a minute." But she was not fine. The medic who had been monitoring the exercise came running over. He checked Maria's pulse, looked at her eyes, and felt her forehead. Then he shook his head. "Heat exhaustion," he said. "Maybe worse. She needs to go to medical immediately." Maria shook her head. "No. I can continue. I just need some water." "This is not a request, candidate." The medic's voice was firm. "You are done. If I let you continue, you could die. We are taking you back to base." A vehicle arrived 30 minutes later. Maria was loaded onto the back, too weak to protest. She watched the forest disappear behind her as they drove away. She had failed her team. She had failed herself. The next thing Maria remembered was waking up in a hospital bed. The room was white and bright. An IV tube was attached to her arm. A nurse was checking her vital signs. "Where am I?" Maria asked. "Base Medical Center," the nurse replied. "You have been here since yesterday. Heat exhaustion, dehydration, and general fatigue. Your body just gave out." Maria closed her eyes. She thought about all the work she had done, all the sacrifices she had made, and now it might all be for nothing. One moment of weakness, and everything could disappear. Later that day, a man walked into her room. He was wearing the uniform of a lieutenant colonel. His name tag said, Davis. He was the commanding officer of OCS. Lieutenant Colonel Davis stood at the foot of Maria's bed and looked at her for a long moment. His face was impossible to read. "Candidate Chen," he said finally. "How are you feeling?" "Better, sir. Ready to return to training." Davis shook his head slowly. "I am not sure that is going to happen." Maria felt her heart stop. "Sir, you collapsed during a field exercise. You put yourself and your team at risk. The medical staff says you pushed yourself too hard for too long. They recommend that you be removed from the program." The words hit Maria like a punch to the stomach. Removed from the program. After everything she had been through, after everything she had sacrificed. "Sir," she said, her voice trembling, "please, give me another chance. I made a mistake. I know that. But I can do better. I can finish this." Davis was silent for a long moment. He seemed to be thinking about something. "You have a sponsor in Washington, he finally said. "Colonel Patterson. He called me this morning. He asked about your condition." Maria nodded. She did not know what to say. "He told me something interesting," Davis continued. "He told me that 5 years ago, he rejected your application to the Air Force Academy. He said you lacked physical resilience. He said you would never make it." Davis paused. "And now here you are, 9 weeks into OCS, and your body has finally given out. Maybe he was right all along. Maybe she cannot handle this." Maria looked at the lieutenant colonel. She saw no cruelty in his eyes, only a kind of sad acceptance. He thought she was finished. He thought the story was over. "Sir," Maria said slowly, "may I tell you something?" Davis nodded. "I have been told my whole life that I cannot handle things. I have been told I am too small, too weak, too quiet. And you know what? Sometimes they were right. Sometimes I could not handle it. Sometimes I failed." Maria paused and took a deep breath. "But every time I failed, I learned something. I learned where my limits were, and then I learned how to push past them. That is what I do. That is who I am." Davis listened without speaking. "I collapsed because I pushed too hard," Maria continued. "That is true. But I pushed too hard because I wanted this too much. I wanted to prove that I belong here. I wanted to show everyone that the girl they rejected 5 years ago was worth something." She looked directly into the lieutenant colonel's eyes. "Please do not send me home, sir. Please give me one more chance." Davis was quiet for a long time. Then he turned and walked toward the door. Maria thought he was leaving without answering. But at the door, he stopped and looked back. "Rest today," he said. "I will make my decision tomorrow." The door closed behind him. Maria was alone. That night, Maria could not sleep. She lay in her hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened. She thought about her father. She thought about the piano. She thought about all the people who had believed in her and all the people who had not. Around midnight, she heard footsteps in the hallway, then voices. Quiet at first, then louder. She recognized one of the voices. It was Jackson. The door to her room opened. Jackson walked in, followed by Rodriguez, Foster, and 4 other candidates. They were still in their field uniforms, dirty and tired from the exercise. "What are you doing here?" Maria asked. "It is the middle of the night. You will get in trouble." Jackson shook his head. "We do not care. We heard they might send you home. We came to talk to the commander." Maria stared at them. "You came to talk to Lieutenant Colonel Davis? About me?" Rodriguez stepped forward. He looked different than he had on the first day of training. The arrogance was gone. In its place was something like respect. "You are our leader, Chen," he said. "You helped us when we were struggling. You taught us how to work together. You made us better." He paused. "We are not going to let them kick you out without a fight." Foster nodded. "We told Davis that if you go, we all request transfers. We told him that we would rather fail together than succeed without you." Maria felt tears forming in her eyes. She blinked them away quickly. "You cannot do that," she said. "You worked too hard to throw it all away for me." Jackson smiled. "That is exactly what you would have done for any of us. That is why you are our leader." Maria did not know what to say. She had spent so much of her life alone, keeping people at a distance, afraid to let anyone get too close. And now these people, these friends, were willing to sacrifice everything for her. "What did Davis say?" she finally asked. Jackson's smile grew wider. "He said you stay. He said anyone who inspires that kind of loyalty deserves another chance." Maria closed her eyes. The tears she had been holding back finally fell. But this time, they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you all." Jackson sat down in the chair beside her bed. The other candidates found places around the room. Nobody seemed in a hurry to leave. "Get some rest," Jackson said. "You have a lot of work ahead of you." "We all do." Maria nodded. For the first time in weeks, she felt at peace. She was not alone anymore. She had found something more valuable than any rank or title. She had found family. Maria returned to training 3 days after her collapse. The medical staff cleared her to continue, but they warned her to pace herself. She could not push as hard as before. She had to listen to her body. She had to be smart. The final weeks of OCS were still difficult, but something had changed. Maria was not fighting alone anymore. Her team surrounded her like a protective wall. When she struggled, they helped. When she doubted herself, they reminded her why she was there. Together, they pushed through the remaining challenges. Peters watched all of this with anger in his eyes. He had expected Maria to fail. He had wanted her to fail. Instead, she had become stronger. She had built something he could not understand. A bond with her fellow candidates that went deeper than competition. One day, about a week before graduation, Peters approached Maria in the dining hall. She was eating lunch with Jackson and Foster when he sat down across from her. "I heard what happened," Peters said. His voice was cold. "I heard your friends went crying to Davis to save you. Must be nice to have people willing to break the rules for you." Maria set down her fork. She looked at Peters calmly. "They are not just my friends," she said. "They are my team. And they did not break any rules. They spoke up for what they believed in." Peters laughed. It was not a kind laugh. "You think this makes you special? You think this makes you a leader? Real leaders do not need to be saved by their followers. Real leaders stand on their own." Jackson started to stand up, his face angry, but Maria put a hand on his arm. "Let me tell you something about leadership," Maria said to Peters. "You think it is about being the strongest or the loudest. You think it is about never showing weakness. But you are wrong. Leadership is about bringing people together. It is about making others better than they would be alone. It is about earning trust and respect, not demanding it." She paused and looked directly into Peters' eyes. "My team did not save me because I am weak. They saved me because they know I would do the same for them. That is the difference between you and me. You want people to follow you because of your name and your family. I want people to follow me because they believe in what we can accomplish together." Peters stared at her for a long moment. Something flickered in his eyes. It might have been anger. It might have been doubt. Maria could not tell. Then he stood up without saying anything and walked away. Jackson watched him go. "That guy has problems. Everyone has problems," Maria replied. "Some people just hide them better than others." The final week of OCS flew by. There were last-minute tests and inspections. There were ceremonies to rehearse. There was the strange feeling of something ending and something new beginning. Maria finished the program ranked 15th in her class. She was not at the top, and she was not at the bottom. She was somewhere solidly in the middle, which was exactly where she wanted to be. She had not asked for special treatment. She had not relied on connections or favors. She had earned her place through hard work and determination. The graduation ceremony was held on a beautiful Saturday morning in early June. The sun was bright and warm. A gentle breeze carried the smell of fresh-cut grass across the parade ground. Rows of white chairs had been set up for the families and guests. Flags fluttered in the wind. Maria marched onto the field with her fellow candidates. They were wearing their dress uniforms, blue and crisp and perfect. Their shoes were polished until they reflected the sunlight. Their faces were serious but proud. In the audience, Maria's mother sat in the front row. She was wearing a simple black dress and holding something in her hands. It was a photograph of Maria's father. She had brought him to see his daughter become an officer. Maria saw her mother as she marched past. Their eyes met for just a moment. Maria saw tears on her mother's cheeks, but also a smile filled with love and pride and the memory of a man who had believed in his daughter from the very beginning. The ceremony began. A general gave a speech about duty and honor and sacrifice. He talked about the challenges the new officers would face and the responsibilities they would carry. He told them that they were now part of something bigger than themselves. Maria listened to every word. She thought about her journey to this moment. The rejection letter, basic training, the long years of invisible work, the gala where everything changed, the struggles of OCS. The night her team came to save her, it had not been an easy path. It had not been a straight path. But it was her path, and she had walked it with courage. When Maria's name was called, she walked across the stage to receive her commission. The general shook her hand and handed her the certificate that made her a second lieutenant in the United States Air Force. Cameras flashed. People applauded. Somewhere in the crowd, Jackson was whistling loudly. Maria looked out at the sea of faces. She saw her mother crying with joy. She saw Jackson and Rodriguez and Foster cheering for her. She saw strangers who did not know her story but were clapping anyway. And she saw one more person, standing at the back of the crowd, wearing his dress uniform with all his medals and ribbons, was Colonel James Patterson. He had flown from Washington to watch the ceremony. He had come to see the girl he had once rejected become an officer. Their eyes met across the crowd. Patterson nodded once, slowly. It was a simple gesture, but Maria understood what it meant. It meant that he was proud of her. It meant that she had proven him wrong. It meant that his mistake had been corrected. Maria nodded back. Then she turned and walked off the stage. After the ceremony, Maria found Patterson standing by himself near the parking lot. He was watching the families celebrate, taking photographs and hugging their new officers. "Congratulations, Lieutenant Chen," he said when Maria approached. "Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming." Patterson was quiet for a moment. He seemed to be searching for the right words. "I have spent my whole career making decisions about people," he finally said. "Thousands of decisions. Some of them were right, some of them were wrong. But I have never been more glad to be wrong than I am today." Maria smiled. "I could not have done it without your help, sir. You gave me a second chance when no one else would." Patterson shook his head. "I opened a door. You walked through it on your own. The strength, the determination, the leadership, that was all you. I just got out of the way." Maria's mother approached them. She was still holding the photograph of Maria's father. Patterson looked at it, and then at Maria. "Your father?" he asked. Maria nodded. "He died when I was 12. He was the one who taught me to play piano. He was the one who told me I could do anything." Patterson looked at the photograph for a long moment. Then he looked at Maria's mother. "Ma'am," he said, "your daughter is one of the most remarkable people I have ever met. Whatever you and your husband did to raise her, you did it right." Maria's mother smiled through her tears. "He would be so proud," she said. "So very proud." The three of them stood together in the warm sunshine. Around them, families celebrated and laughed and took pictures. It was a day of endings and beginnings. A day of dreams fulfilled and new dreams born. Later that afternoon, Maria said goodbye to her mother and began the process of checking out of OCS. She had a few weeks of leave before her next assignment. She was going to pilot training. She was going to learn to fly. As she packed her bags, Jackson knocked on her door. "Hey," he said. "A bunch of us are going out tonight to celebrate. You should come." Maria looked at him. A year ago, she would have said no. A year ago, she was afraid to let people get close. But things were different now. "Okay," she said. "I will be there." Jackson grinned. "Perfect. And Chen? Lieutenant Chen? Congratulations. You earned it." He left, and Maria finished packing. She looked around the small room that had been her home for the past few months. So much had happened here. So much had changed. She thought about what came next. Pilot training would be even harder than OCS. The standards were higher. The competition was fierce. Many people who started pilot training never finished. But Maria was not afraid. She had learned something important over the past year. She had learned that failure was not the end. She had learned that getting knocked down was not the same as being defeated. She had learned that the people who succeed are not the ones who never fall, but the ones who always get back up. Maria Chen was going to fly. Nothing was going to stop her now. 4 years had passed since Maria graduated from officer candidate school. 4 years of training, sacrifice, and hard work. 4 years that had transformed her from a nervous young officer into a seasoned helicopter pilot. Captain Maria Chen was now stationed at a rescue squadron in California. She flew HH-60 Pave Hawk helicopters, the aircraft used by the Air Force for combat search and rescue. Her job was to fly into dangerous situations and bring people home. It was exactly what she had told Colonel Patterson she wanted to do all those years ago. Maria loved her work. Every mission was different. Every mission mattered. She had rescued soldiers wounded in training exercises. She had pulled hikers off mountainsides. She had flown through storms and darkness to find people who had been given up for lost. Each time, she felt the same rush of purpose. This was why she had fought so hard. This was why she had refused to give up. Her crew trusted her completely. There was Chief Warrant Officer Rodriguez, her co-pilot, a calm and steady man who never panicked no matter how bad things got. There was Sergeant Gomez, the flight engineer, who knew the helicopter better than anyone alive. And there was Staff Sergeant Williams, the aerial gunner and para-rescueman, who would jump out of the aircraft into any situation to save a life. They had been through a lot together. They had faced mechanical failures, enemy fire during overseas deployments, and weather that would have grounded lesser crews. Through it all, Maria had led them with the same quiet determination that had carried her through OCS. She listened to her team. She trusted their expertise. She made decisions quickly and calmly under pressure. It was late October when the call came. Maria was in the squadron building, going over maintenance reports with Rodriguez, when the alert sirens sounded. A wildfire had broken out in the mountains north of Los Angeles. It was spreading fast, driven by strong winds and dry conditions. Hundreds of people were being evacuated, but there was a problem. A family of 5 had been hiking in a remote area. When the fire cut off their escape route, they were trapped on a rocky ridge, surrounded by flames. Ground rescue teams could not reach them. The only hope was an air rescue. Maria and her crew ran to their helicopter. Within minutes, they were airborne, racing toward the mountains. Maria pushed the aircraft hard, flying faster than she normally would. She knew that every second counted. The scene below was terrifying. The fire had turned the forest into an ocean of orange and red. Smoke billowed thousands of feet into the sky. Even from inside the helicopter, Maria could feel the heat rising from below. Rodriguez was monitoring the radio. He turned to Maria with a worried look. "Command is saying visibility is near zero at the ridge," he said. "Winds are gusting to 40 miles per hour. They are recommending we abort." Maria looked at the wall of smoke ahead. She knew the risks. Flying into those conditions was extremely dangerous. The winds could throw the helicopter into the mountainside. The smoke could blind them completely. One wrong move, and they would all die. But somewhere in that inferno, 5 people were waiting for rescue. A mother, a father, 3 children. They were counting on someone to come for them. "What do you think?" Maria asked her crew. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "It is your call, Captain. Whatever you decide, we are with you." Gomez nodded from the back. "Same here. I trust you." Williams checked his equipment. "Just get me close enough. I will do the rest." Maria looked out at the burning mountains. She thought about all the people who had told her she could not handle difficult things. She thought about the commander who had said she lacked resilience. She thought about Sergeant Wells calling her piano girl like it was an insult. Then she thought about the piano. She thought about how she had learned to break impossible pieces into small sections. One measure at a time, one phrase at a time, one note at a time. "We are going in," she said. Maria flew toward the ridge. The smoke swallowed them like a dark curtain. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Maria could barely see the ground below. She relied completely on her instruments, watching the altitude, the heading, the wind speed. She counted in her head like she was playing music. 1, 2, 3, 4. Steady and calm. Rodriguez called out readings from his instruments. Gomez monitored the engines. Williams prepared to drop down to the trapped family. Everyone did their job perfectly, trusting each other, trusting their captain. The winds hit them hard. The helicopter shook and bounced. Maria fought the controls, making constant small adjustments to keep them stable. Her arms ached from the effort. Sweat dripped down her face. But she did not stop. She could not stop. Suddenly, through a gap in the smoke, Maria saw the ridge. And on the ridge, she saw 5 figures huddled together. The family. They were waving their arms, desperately signaling for help. "I see them," Maria said, preparing to hover. She brought the helicopter into position above the ridge. The winds were still strong, pushing against them from every direction. Maria held the aircraft steady through pure skill and willpower. She blocked out everything except the instruments and the feel of the controls in her hands. Williams lowered himself down on the hoist. The smoke made it hard to see, but Maria kept the helicopter perfectly positioned. One by one, Williams brought the family members up. First the children, 2 girls and a boy, their faces streaked with tears and ash. Then the mother, who kept thanking Williams over and over. Finally the father, who was injured and had to be carried. It took 20 minutes to get everyone aboard. 20 minutes of hovering, in impossible conditions, fighting the wind and the smoke, refusing to give up. By the time Williams gave the thumbs up that everyone was secure, Maria's arms were shaking with exhaustion. "All aboard," Williams reported. "Let us get out of here." Maria turned the helicopter and flew out of the smoke. Behind them, the fire continued to rage, destroying everything in its path. But the family was safe. They were going home. The mother sat in the back of the helicopter, holding her children close. She looked at Maria with tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for not giving up." Maria nodded. She did not trust herself to speak. The emotions were too strong. They landed at a staging area where ambulances were waiting. The family was taken to the hospital to be checked for injuries and smoke inhalation. Media crews were there too, filming everything. The story of the rescue was already spreading. As Maria shut down the helicopter, Rodriguez turned to her. "That was the best flying I have ever seen," he said quietly. "I do not know how you did it." Maria looked at her hands. They were still shaking. "I just took it one moment at a time," she said. "Like playing a difficult piece of music. You do not think about the whole thing. You just focus on the next note." Rodriguez smiled. "Well, Captain, that was one hell of a performance." Later that night, Maria sat alone in her quarters. The adrenaline had faded, leaving her exhausted but unable to sleep. She kept thinking about the family on the ridge. She kept thinking about the children's faces when Williams pulled them to safety. She had done what she had always dreamed of doing. She had flown into danger and brought people home. She had proven that the girl everyone had underestimated could do extraordinary things. Maria walked to the window and looked out at the night sky. The stars were bright and clear. Somewhere in the distance, she could see the glow of the wildfire, still burning but contained now. Firefighters on the ground were working through the night to stop its spread. She thought about her father. She wondered if he was watching from somewhere above. She hoped he was proud. Tomorrow, there would be questions and reports and interviews. The rescue would be analyzed and studied. Maria would have to explain her decisions, justify her choices, accept whatever praise or criticism came her way. But tonight, she just wanted to be quiet. She just wanted to remember the feeling of doing something that mattered. Maria closed her eyes and let the silence wrap around her. For the first time in a very long time, she felt at peace. She had found her purpose. She had found her place in the sky. The news of the wildfire rescue spread quickly. Television stations showed footage of the burning mountains and the helicopter disappearing into the smoke. Newspapers ran stories about the brave pilot who had risked everything to save a family of 5. Social media was filled with videos and pictures and messages of gratitude. Maria became famous overnight. She did not want the attention, but there was no escaping it. Her commanding officer called her into his office and told her that she had been recommended for the Distinguished Flying Cross, one of the highest awards a pilot could receive. The family she had rescued went on television to thank her. Her photograph appeared on the front page of newspapers across the country. Through it all, Maria tried to stay focused on her work. She continued to fly missions with her crew. She continued to train and improve. She did not let the attention change who she was. But the attention brought other things too. People wanted to know her story. They wanted to know how a small woman from San Francisco had become one of the best rescue pilots in the Air Force. They wanted to know about her journey from rejection to triumph. Maria was careful about what she shared. She did not want to be seen as special or different. She did not want people to think that her path was easy or inevitable. She wanted them to understand that success came from hard work and determination, not from luck or natural talent. The ceremony for the Distinguished Flying Cross was held at the Pentagon on a cold December morning. Maria's mother flew from California to attend. Jackson came too, now a major himself, working at a base in Texas. Rodriguez and the rest of Maria's crew were there in their dress uniforms, proud to support their captain. The Secretary of the Air Force pinned the medal on Maria's chest. He read the citation aloud, describing the mission in detail. He called her actions heroic, beyond measure. and said that she represented the best of what the Air Force could be. Maria stood at attention throughout the ceremony. She kept her face calm and professional. But inside, she was thinking about everything that had led to this moment. Every failure, every rejection, every time someone had told her she was not good enough. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Important people came to shake Maria's hand and congratulate her. Generals and politicians and business leaders. They all wanted to meet the pilot who had flown into fire. A reporter from a major newspaper approached Maria during the reception. She was a young woman with sharp eyes and a voice recorder in her hand. "Captain Chen," she said, "everyone wants to know, what gave you the strength to attempt that rescue? The conditions were impossible. Command told you to abort. What made you decide to go in anyway?" Maria thought about the question for a long moment. She could have given a simple answer. She could have talked about duty or training or the will to succeed. But she decided to tell the truth. "When I was 18, Maria said, I applied to the Air Force Academy. I wanted to be a pilot more than anything in the world. But I was rejected. The commander who reviewed my file wrote that I lacked physical resilience. He said I should pursue other interests." The reporter's eyes widened. She had not expected this. "That rejection almost destroyed me," Maria continued. "I spent years thinking I was not good enough. I spent years trying to prove that I was worth something. And you know what I learned? The people who succeed are not the ones who never get knocked down. They are the ones who refuse to stay down." Maria paused and looked around the room. She saw her mother watching her with tears in her eyes. She saw Jackson nodding with understanding. She saw her crew members standing tall and proud. That night in the mountains, when command told us to abort, I thought about all the people who had told me I could not do things. I thought about every door that had been closed in my face, and I decided that I was not going to let fear make my decisions anymore. I was going to trust my training, trust my crew, and do what I knew was right. The reporter was writing quickly. "What about the piano?" she asked. "I read that you were a child prodigy. How does music connect to what you do now?" Maria smiled. This was a question she was happy to answer. "My piano teacher told me something when I was young that I never forgot. She said that the most difficult pieces are not played by people who never struggle. They are played by people who struggle and refuse to stop practicing. Flying is the same way. Life is the same way. You break the impossible into small pieces. You take it one note at a time, one measure at a time, and eventually, you play the whole song." The reporter thanked Maria and moved away, but her words had been heard by others nearby. They spread through the room, and soon everyone was talking about the pilot who compared flying to playing piano. That evening, after the reception ended, Maria went to a small concert venue in downtown Washington. It was a quiet place with a beautiful grand piano on the stage. Jackson had found it and made arrangements for Maria to perform. It was not a public event, just a private gathering of friends and family. Maria sat down at the piano. The bench was smooth and familiar beneath her. The keys gleamed in the soft light. She placed her fingers on the ivory and felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She thought about her father teaching her scales in their apartment. She thought about playing Chopin on the night she received her rejection letter. She thought about the dusty piano in the recreation center at Maxwell Air Force Base. She thought about all the music that had carried her through the darkest times of her life. Maria began to play. She played the Revolutionary Etude by Chopin. The same piece she had played the night her dream was shattered. The same piece that had expressed all her anger and sorrow and determination. But tonight, it sounded different. Tonight, it did not sound like someone fighting a war. It sounded like someone who had won. The music filled the small venue. It poured out of the piano like water from a fountain, fast and passionate and beautiful. Maria's fingers danced across the keys with perfect precision. She did not miss a single note. In the audience, Maria's mother held the photograph of her father and wept. Jackson watched with awe on his face. Rodriguez and Gomez and Williams sat in silence, seeing their captain in a completely new way. When the last note faded into the air, no one moved. No one spoke. The silence was sacred, like a prayer. Then Maria's mother stood up and began to applaud. Jackson joined her. Then Rodriguez and Gomez and Williams. Soon everyone was on their feet, clapping and cheering for the woman at the piano. Maria stood and bowed. She looked at the faces of the people she loved. Her mother, who had sacrificed everything to raise her. Her friends, who had stood by her through the hardest times. Her crew, who trusted her with their lives. She thought about the commander, who had said she could not handle the Air Force. She wondered if he was watching the news tonight. She wondered if he knew what his rejection had created, because Maria understood now that the rejection had been a gift. It had forced her to find another way. It had made her stronger than she ever would have been if everything had come easy. It had taught her that the most beautiful music comes from the most difficult struggles. After the performance, Maria stepped outside into the cold December air. The sky was clear and filled with stars. She breathed deeply and felt the chill fill her lungs. Jackson came to stand beside her. "That was incredible," he said. "I have never heard anything like it." Maria smiled. "Thank you for being here. Thank you for everything." Jackson shrugged. "You would have done the same for me." That is what friends do. They stood together in comfortable silence, looking up at the stars. "What happens next?" Jackson finally asked. "More rescues? More missions? Another medal?" Maria thought about the question. She thought about everything she had accomplished and everything that still lay ahead. She was 30 years old. She had already done more than most people dreamed of, but she knew that her story was not finished. "I do not know what happens next," she admitted. "But I know that whatever it is, I will face it the same way I have faced everything else, one note at a time, one measure at a time, until the whole song is complete." Jackson nodded. He understood. Above them, the stars continued to shine. They had been shining for billions of years, long before Maria was born. And they would continue to shine long after she was gone. But for this one moment, they seemed to be shining just for her. Maria Chen had started as a small girl with a big dream. She had been told she was not strong enough, not tall enough, not good enough. She had been rejected and dismissed and underestimated at every turn, but she had refused to give up. She had found another way. She had proven that strength comes in many forms, and that the size of a person's heart matters more than the size of their body. The commander had said she could not handle it, but Maria had played the piano beautifully, and in the end, that had made all the difference.